It's good to have Ted back in studio. Ted Kafalis with Grassroot Institute of Hawaii. We have a straight shot to the top of the hour. Let's use our time wisely. And Ted, we do have crossover in the big square building. We've spoken about several bills on the program during the week, but I know that you have some priorities that you're taking a look at. I want to turn it over to you. And what's top of mind today?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Rick. Always good when we get a chance to talk about things in the big square building and things that might be happening that people might not have an idea about. So crossover is today, and for folks that might not know what that is, essentially it means that all bills have to be out of their originating chamber. So a lot of times you'll see House bills and Senate bills. That means that the House bill has to be out of the House and moved over to the Senate, crossing over to the Senate, if you will, and vice versa with those bills. So it's an important deadline, and it kind of marks the halfway point in the legislative session. With that being said, a lot of bills are kind of dead, and they either didn't get a hearing or were deferred. And so it's becoming a lot clearer now what is actually a viable option. Top of mind, I think, for most people is housing. The cost of living and the expensive costs just to buy a home or even rent here in Hawaii. And so there's a few bills that are going through that we are really excited about and think could make a huge difference. Number one being it's HB 1630 and SB 3202. This would allow smaller homes on smaller lots here in Hawaii. So essentially, in Honolulu, we have a minimum lot size of 3,500 square feet, but for the most part, those lands are gone. They're already developed. So the minimum lot size is really 5,000, and on the neighbor islands, it's upward of 6,000 square feet. Well, the number one cost of housing is in the land because it's so valuable and it's such a limited resource here. So when you require somebody to have 5,000 or 6,000 square feet, you're artificially driving up the prices. And as a result, you're not going to see a little 1,200, 1,500 square foot home getting built on these, 5,000, 6,000 mega lot sizes. And so, this bill would allow you to build smaller homes on smaller lots, like I said, but also allow folks to subdivide lots. So if you have a lot that's like 10,000 square feet, now all of a sudden you can split that lot up into different parcels and potentially build more homes on that lot. That could be a game changer for folks that are potentially thinking about leaving and they own a home, but it's just become too expensive. Whether you go to the grocery store, I mean, Rick, you know this, the grocery expenses, between taxes, between the unfriendly business climate. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are contemplating leaving and have
they
already.
Are leaving.
Yeah, exactly. And so, this is something that could allow folks to put a little bit more money in their pocket. And so we're incredibly excited about that. It did have some floor debate and has drawn some criticism from folks in the neighborhood boards, but you can't spell NIMBY without NB for the neighborhood boards, and it has become such a weapon that these neighborhood boards and folks can come in and try to organize and stop housing projects that we desperately need. So we're hopeful that this gets through despite some of those objections. And luckily, the House bill and both the Senate bill both crossed over to the opposite side. So there are two vehicles still moving.
I don't believe it's simply neighborhood boards. They are homeowners in particular neighborhoods. And there's been a big battle against monster homes. And I know proponents of this subdivision of your own property don't want to make a comparison to a monster home. However, there were attempts with ADUs introduced numerous years ago that was a solution to exactly what you described. You had a 900 square foot limit. It came in 400 and 900 square feet. People were excited. Yes, it could be in-law housing. It could be for our adult children, whatever use you wanted. And it was shut down because the infrastructure was not sufficient. And you would have the Department of Water, you would have other organizations, sewer, etc. Can't do it. We don't have the capacity. Plus, there was mandating of parking. You needed to accommodate minimal amounts of parking for each structure. Now, I know that there will be a revisitation of permitting for homeowners to effectuate this if it passes. But I'm saying that the impact to others, it is substantial, because then you get into areas of valuation of properties. And if there's a diminishment or a reduction because there's multiple homes of structure, then you're going to have a net effect in the entire neighborhood, if you will. So I understand the both sides of it. And I think this is more of an approach by the Green administration to fulfill the promise of 50,000 new housing. And I get that. All right, it's very aggressive. But there are also considerations of the ancillary that do have import as well.
Yeah, and just to point out to some of your points that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about infrastructure right now, there currently is very little incentive to fix our infrastructure and advance it and expand it. This would be something that would create that incentive, because now all of a sudden you would have homeowners and folks that want to build housing on land that they own and would be advocating for that infrastructure. You look at home valuations, and yes, this would bring down homes, but if you keep your single-family home, you can, your value would relatively stay the same as if you're not lot splitting. When we're talking about like tax assessments, for example, they use a system where they compare like sizes and whatnot to your home. So you wouldn't have a single family home that's compared to a lot with like 2 or 3 homes on it. So I think, there is, I understand the concerns, but right now in Honolulu, you're allowed 2 ADUs, or sorry, 1 home and 1 ADU on a lot.
Right.
This would allow 1 home and 2 ADUs on a lot. And so it's not so much of a aggressive change. We're not looking to build 50,000 units at Aloha Stadium as there have been proposals in the past. It would be a gradual change to our neighborhoods, and something too where we're not eating away at the environment or our conservation lands. Right now, with our current minimum lot sizes, we are going to just perpetuate urban sprawl because we've completely run out of land on where we can build.
Oh, I beg to differ. We have an inordinate amount of inventory at the disposal between municipal, state, and land trusts. And it's an effort under land use commission, zoning commissions, committees rather, to free that land up. When the state, even the city and county, urged that affordable housing, affordability, you said it right off the bat, you're right, land valuation. The retention of land, for whatever reason, conservation, environment, or just sitting on it, the freeing up of that land is critical. So if the state or city wants to demand, do you have to do this? Well, turn the mirror around and let's see what you got.
Yeah, and to your point, there's only about 5% of land here that's zoned urban or residential for folks. The rest is conservation or agriculture.
And then we change it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Easier said than done.
Oh, well, so same thing with the construction of multiple ADUs. Because why haven't we taken advantage of it up until now?
Yeah.
It's been available for at least 10 years. I remember the launch over at the mission houses when they were on display. So whatever has constricted or disallowed, that needs to be fixed. if these bills are passed. And I'll quote you, better, easier said than done. Anyway, I appreciate and thank you for the information that both bills at crossover. So that means that moving very much forward.
Yeah. And to highlight maybe one more non-controversial bill is it's actually HB 2090 and SB 2948. Those would allow for residential uses in commercial areas and allow for more adaptive reuse. I think most folks can agree that after COVID, we've seen a spike in vacant commercial uses, whether they're office spaces, people working from home, retail, more people are shopping online than ever before. And so how can we convert some of these buildings into housing and create some of these more livable, walkable communities? I mean, you walk around even just here in Chinatown and you see so much potential and opportunity to provide housing for folks. And, you can take out a lot of the costs of building because the structure is already there. So, those bills both have also crossed over to their respective chambers, and that's something that as well we're very excited about the potential to provide more housing for folks here in Hawaii.
What's top of mind in regard to taxes and revenue generation and the justification of the Maui recovery plans, etc.?
Sure. So, there's a few bills. Top of mind is the conveyance tax increase. That would drastically increase the conveyance tax on certain properties. And, I understand the want to increase taxes, but we also have to understand, when you tax things like a conveyance tax or like a cigarette tax, you're disincentivizing it almost. And a conveyance tax is sales on property. So you're almost disincentivizing sales of these properties by increasing a tax on them. Folks are just going to end up saying, I'll just stay in my house and not worry about selling it and not put it on the market, which is not necessarily the best thing. I want to point out there's a couple of bills that would actually be good bills. They would actually increase the amount of the state income tax deduction and adjust tax brackets to inflation. Something that is well overdue and could provide a lot of relief for families that are really struggling just to afford to live here. That being said, there is another concerning bill. So Governor Green's kind of green fee, I'm calling it the green fee 2.0. He's looking to charge a $25 surcharge on the TAT. There's actually another bill going forward that would increase that to $50 a night, which are both super concerning because already we have the highest tourism taxes around. And we're driving folks to other places. I mean, we don't have a monopoly on paradise. There's so many other places, and with the internet and places are getting cheaper and cheaper, we have to stay competitive as a tourism market. And so to continue to put these burdensome fees, and not to mention all of the people that we talked about earlier that have left Hawaii and want to come back for auntie or their grandma's birthday or whatnot, and they have to stay in a hotel, let's say. Well, that's a huge increase for them now. And all of a sudden they have to consider if they're even going to go now. Or if they are going to go, maybe they're not going to go on a paddling trip, or maybe they're not going to go on a family get-together because of that. So these are all things that we have to consider when we just want to blanketly say, let's tax the tourists.
Well, not only that, we also find that our friends in the hospitality industry, you have become the greatest tax collector because the burden is on you. Now you have to deal with, in a competitive tourism industry, justifying why your bill is now going to be exponentially higher. And the green fee per person, 17 years and older. So if you're bringing your family and you got adult kids or whatever, holy Toledo.
Yep.
That is great.
And we've already seen, there was an article, I think, today or yesterday, that tourism numbers are slow to recover.
Yeah, you're right. We are down January, February year to date.
Exactly.
And it's on a slip. We're going to have to carve out about 3 hours next time, Ted.
Yeah.
Ted Kafalis, how do we connect with Grassroot Institute?
Yeah, so visit us online. It's grassrootinstitute.org. That's .org. You can sign up for our newsletters that come out every week. You could also follow us on Instagram. It's at Grassroot Hawaii. We post a lot of great memes and just up-to-the-date information so that folks can understand what's happening behind the scenes at the legislature.
Ted Kafalis, thank you so very much.
All right, thanks, Rick, as always.